Okay, dear friends, I am Tuna Aygün. I am an Iraq studies expert in ORSAM since I have been in ORSAM since 2015, late 2015 or 2000, early 2016. Today, the discussion that we are going to have about on Iraq is going to be primarily about the protest movements that we are witnessing also today, and the implications of this protest movements. And during this seminar, I will follow an outline, which first I will start with some basics about Iraq, then I will talk about the protest movements and the future implications, the way forward about these social movements. And I believe we are going to have some time after my introduction, my presentation, for the Q&A. So you are all very welcome to send me your questions. You can also send the questions while we are doing the presentation, and I will just return to the questions at the end of this dedicated time period. And to start with the definition of Iraq, it is a country which is located in Western Asia, and its neighbors are Turkey, Iran, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Syria. As a state, Iraq was established in 1920 as an UK mandate by the League of Nations, and later it was an independent state by the 1932, and by 1958 it was transformed into a republic by a coup. And after this coup, Iraq's history has witnessed many military coups and counter coups. The latest of them being the Ba'athist coup, and this Ba'athist regime could rule the country till the 2003, until the military invasion by the US. Then the Ba'ath party was transformed into an underground structure, and then President Saddam Hussein was ousted from the power. This is the very basics about Iraq, that we have to know some basics to be able to understand today's Iraq. So after this very brief introduction, I will talk about the composition of Iraq, like what the demographics look like in Iraq. Today, the population is estimated to be around 40 million. But it is a very diverse population because even though the 98%, around 98% of the population is Muslim, but the Muslims are divided into different sects, and there is the other religions that we can see in Iraq, namely the Christians, Yazidis, Shebeks, Mandaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and other very localized folk religions. And when we are talking about this division, around 60% of the Muslim population are the Shiite Muslims, and around 30% of the Muslim population is the Sunni Muslims. If you add up these two numbers, it doesn't add up to 100%, because today we are not exactly sure what are the real ratios. So in different sources, you can see the Shiite Muslims around 70% and the Sunni Muslims around 30%. In some other sources, you can see the Sunni Muslims around 40% and the Shiite Muslims around 60%. But these figures are we cannot know that for sure. But this is This is what we can call safely that around 60 to 30% are divided between respectively to Shiite Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. Then the other minority religions that I just named are very few, but for some of them we can see them living in an isolated locations. Like for example, the Yazidis, we can see that they are mostly living in two locations, in the Doğuk province up in the north and the Ninova province. It is also between the Turkey and Syria border side. And when we look at to the other part of the demographics, to the ethnic division, we can say that the 60 to 65% of the population is Arabs, around 20% is Kurds, around 10% are the Turkmens, and 5 to 10% of the population, rest of the population are the Assyrians, Kakayes, Chaldeans, Circassians, Sabaeans, and Mandaeans, and Persians. Also in this ethnic division, we can see that the population is really diverse. And also just to mention, the previously named ethnic identities and the religions are cross-cutting each other. What I mean by that is that when we look at to the Arabs, there is the Shiite Arabs and the Sunni Arabs, which also applies for the Kurds, Turkmens, and Kakayes and Shebeks. Sorry, to Kakayes, not to the Shebeks, which makes the Iraqi demographics more diverse in the sense that the ethnic and religious identities are cross-cutting each other. Therefore, we can see that we cannot unify all the Arabs under a single name, or either the Kurds or the other minority groups. Then going back to the basics of the demographics, around 70% of the Iraqi population is living in urban sites, while the rest 30% is living in the rural areas. What I mean by that is that the 70% is living in the province, the respected provinces, capital districts, or the city center of the other districts in each provinces. And to mention it, there is 18 governorates, which I will also mention them as provinces in Iraq, and the most populated ones of these provinces are the Baghdad, Nineveh, and Basra. And the median age of the Iraqi population is 20.2. So when we are talking about the Iraqi population, we have to understand, we have to know that this population is very young population. As I said, it is around 20 age is the median age of the Iraqi population, of that around 40 million population. And I think this brief information about the population and the demographics of Iraq is going to be sufficient for the next parts of the presentations. But just to stress it out, please keep in your mind that the Iraqi population is very, very young, which we will see taking a role in the protest movements. And when we are talking about the definition of Iraq, the other thing, another significant point we have to mention is that there is the Iraqi constitution, which was ratified on a referendum in 2005, and it was written by a commission with the participation of the Iraqi components, but the fair presentation was, this commission was not based on the real demographics of the Iraq, so we will see some issues coming out of this constitution. And to change this constitution, almost all provinces should be accepting the changes with a popular vote, which was not possible in the last 15 years that Iraq has its current constitution. There was some initiatives for amending the Iraqi constitution, but none of them was successful. And what has changed with this 2005 constitution is that before Iraq was an unitary, speaking from the administrative perspective, Iraq was an unitary state. But with this referendum, Iraq was changed into a federalist state, which means that the power which was heavy on the center was reallocated to the provinces, the governorates. And today we see, when we are looking at the governors, there is a governor which is elected by the provincial council, which then the provincial council is elected by the people's vote. So we see that the power is transferred to the local authorities, but the culture, when we are speaking about the political culture of Iraq, it is mainly a centralized state. So today we have some issues regarding to the popular political culture and the current situation we have today. During the constitution was being worked on, the Sunni participants of the Constitution Writing Commission was objecting the federalist state, but they were rejecting the federalism. Therefore, they didn't want to be in the political process after the new constitution. So we have witnessed the Sunni representation in the so-called New Iraq was starting very weakly. Please also keep this in mind, because it will be another motive which will be linked to the protests. And when we are speaking about the constitution, today the Kurdish regional government, also known as the KRG, which was an already existing and autonomous region in Iraq, was accepted in the new constitution. And the new constitution was also explaining how new regions like the KRG should be formed. Therefore, the constitution calls for localized power, the transfer of power to the localized authorities, but the political culture of Iraq is about power being centralized in Baghdad. We can speak about some centers in Iraq, such as namely the Mosul, also the capital of the Nineveh Governorate, Baghdad and Basra as being the traditional centers of today's Iraq. But after the 1920, it was mainly centralized. The power was mainly centralized in Baghdad. And this is the situation that we reached after the 2003 intervention, invasion by US, and later the writing of the new constitution. So what we have is a very young population on one hand, and on the other hand, we have some new democratic system, but with very little experience by the Iraqi politicians on how to run a state or how to participate or partake in the political process. This will be another motive for the protests. And to talk about the protest movements, I will be briefly speaking about some boom protests that we have experienced in Iraq after 2005. The first of this protest was 2011 protest, which occurred in the central Iraq, KRG, and Duhok province of KRG. And later I will be speaking about the 2012 and 2013 protests, which was centralized in the Sunni governorates in Iraq, and later the 2015 to 2018 protest, which was located in the central and southern Iraq, and later the current protest that we can be speaking is the ones which started in 2019 and which is still ongoing, and also the 2020 Süleymaniye protests. The first protest that I will be speaking is the 2011 protest was occurred in the wake of the Arab Spring after the Tunisian and Egyptian revolutions take place. It created an atmosphere that the Iraqi people also hit the streets and protest and call for reforms. And the main reasons for this protest was, I will read it from my notes: corruption, poor national security, poor public services, unemployment was the main reasons, allegedly the main reasons of this protest. And this protest, the 2011 protests after the Arab Spring, happened mostly in Baghdad and Karbala, but in the Mosul, Basra, and the Karachi provinces, there was also some protests happened. And the second one that I will mention is going to be again in the wake of the Arab Spring, the 2011 KRG protests. This protest occurred in the Süleymaniye province. As maybe it was better if I mentioned before that the KRG consists out of three provinces, namely the Duhok province, Erbil, and Süleymaniye. And this protest happened in the 2011 had happened in the Süleymaniye provinces, and it was organized by an political party called the Goran Movement, which means in English the Change Movement. It was organized by this political party, and the headquarters of the Kurdistan Democratic Party, which is led by the Barzanis, was also targeted in this protest in Süleymaniye. And the alleged reasons for this protest was also, I'm going to read out of my notes: the corruption, nepotism, Arab Spring, and social injustice. Also, please try to remember these reasons, because there is another motive in this protest reasons. And also in the 2011, there was another protest occurred in the KRG, but this time not in the Süleymaniye region, but in the Duhok province. Historically, this Duhok province is also led by, is controlled and ruled by the KDP, and this protest is actually, it's more like a riot than a protest. It lasted 4 days, and it has started after the Friday sermon speech by an Kurdish imam in the region, which called for taking an action about minority-owned businesses, claiming that they are the houses of sin. Therefore, after the Ismail Osman Sindai's call for this action, Yazdi and Assyrian, the minority-owned businesses in the Duhok province, it started in the sub-district of Duhok called Zaho, which is on the Turkish border. And then later it was also, it happened in the Duhok province in the center areas, that many people were just burning the minority-owned businesses in the in the city. And later, the security forces intervened to the protests, and the riot was stopped. But after the riots, we have witnessed a second wave of the protests, which was organized by the secular Kurds, targeting the Kurdistan Islamic Union Party, also known as the Yekgürtü, and they were targeting the Yekgürtü offices and headquarters in the province. And this is another motive that we are going to witness. I briefly mentioned this motive, when I was speaking about the coup historical perspective of Iraq. We see the protests, and we are going to see the counter protests. So this was an example for that. And later, after this protest in the Iraq, if we leave aside the protests occurred in the KRG, the central Iraq, we have witnessed that the participation to the protest was from different provinces and from different backgrounds. Maybe it was also better if I mentioned that but this is mentioned that about the provinces for their backgrounds, but I think now I will be able to speak about that. On the previous protests, we see provinces with people of different backgrounds, different ethnic and sectarian identities were taking part in the same protest. But when we are going to look at the 2012 and 2013 elections, which lasted more than a year, was mainly organized by the Sunnis. And following a raid on at the finance minister Rafi al-Isawi's house and arresting of his bodyguards and charging them as running and killing squads, there was the popular protest between the Iraq Sunnis started in the Anbar province, which is mostly a Sunni province. And another reason for this protest was that there was a law, and there is still that law in Iraq. It is called the Baathification law, which is to cleanse the state and the offices from the figures related to the Baath party. And allegedly, this law was used as a tool for the running pressuring the Sunni political figures by the Maliki, which was the prime minister of Iraq then. And the other reasons claimed by the protesters was corruption, unemployment, poor national security, poor public services, and marginalization of the Sunni minority, and unfair treatment of the prisoners of the Sunni background. And there was a militia group which was called by the US and the Iraq's government to fighting against the Al-Qaeda, which was called the Sahwa militia. And the poor salaries of this militia group was also a reason for this protest. And as you look at the time, it has ended during the 2013, because at the same time we have witnessed the emergence of ISIS in Iraq in the Sunni provinces. We have seen that the ISIS could overrun Anbar, then like the Nineveh governorate, then to parts of the other governorates. And this war against ISIS lasted till 2017. And this is going to be the one of the reasons of the Iraq's next protests of 2015 till 2018. Due to the increased public spending on the security, many infrastructure investments and employment generating plans in Iraq was put aside. They were brushed aside completely because terrorist organization ISIS almost controlled the half of the country. And after this incident, we see some protests happening in the southern provinces, central and southern provinces, because the protests of this 2015 till 2018 protests started in Baghdad, but during the last year, in the last year of this protest, it was mainly organized in Basra due to the waterborne illnesses due to the poor filtration. And the main reasons of this protest was also unemployment and poverty, poor public services, state corruption, and the water crisis, and also the growth of ISIS. And this protest was ended in 2018 by the initiative of the Prime Minister, then the Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi. He visited the Basra province. He met with the chieftains of the tribes there, and it was ended. But also the 2018 elections was a reason for the ending of this protest. And when we are going to speak about the current protests we are witnessing today in Iraq, we started in 1 October 2019, and which is still ongoing. It was started after the elections held in Iraq in 2018. There was the political figures, the two major political figures then is the Muqtada Sadr-led Syrian coalition and the Adi al-Amri-led Fatih coalition. After these elections, these two coalitions both claimed that they were the largest parliamentary blocs, therefore they wanted to form the government. But this dispute was not able to be solved. So these two blocs gathered together and they find a compromise candidate between two of them, which was Adil Abdul Mehdi. And after the elections, which happened in the May, around six months, half a year later, Adil Abdul Mehdi could form his. He was charged with creating the government, and later when he tried to take confidence vote from the Iraqi parliament, it was also a longer than usual time period. But during his prime ministry, in the 1 October, we have witnessed some protests starting in Baghdad. It was actually started after a very charismatic and well-known figure in Iraq, Abdul Wahab al-Saadi, which was the commander of the counterterrorism forces, which played a huge role on the war against ISIS. And he was taken from his military post and transformed to a military post within the Ministry of Defense. So the protest started after this incident that people wanted Abdul Wahab Saadi to stay in his post, and the protest started in Baghdad. Later, this protest was this reason is very specific, but later the protest broadened, and both as the main reasons why the people were hitting the streets, and also for the reason, the geographical location. It was started in Baghdad, but later it was almost in the old provinces, all the central and southern provinces. We could see some social movements, and Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mehdi tried to tried to negotiate some solutions with the protesters, but he was not successful. And in late November, he presented his resignation later to the parliament. And on the 1st of December 2019, his resignation was accepted by the Iraqi parliament. And after this incident, we have witnessed another time period in Iraq that the political parties could not agree on a single candidate which would be charged with forming the new government. And this, after this crisis was ended with the Mustafa Academy forming the government, but before himself, two other political figures, Muhammad Tevfik Allawi and Adnan al-Zurfi, tried to form the government, but they were unsuccessful. So we have witnessed another political crisis after this protest movement. And to name the basic reasons, the main reasons for this protest was the state corruption, anti-American sentiment, and anti-Iranian sentiment, unemployment, low wages, and poor public services. Again, you can see these motives from the previous protests, that almost all the protests are based on a very similar reasons. And later, when we are speaking about the 2020, we have also witnessed some protests in Süleymaniye. Due to the financial crisis in KRG, also caused by the increased military spending, and also the budget cuts and the decreasing oil prices, the KRG is having difficulties paying the salaries of the civil servants, and around almost 50% of the workforce in the KRG consists of the civil servants. Therefore, lack of salaries is indirect. Lack of civil servant salaries are indirect. Direct problem on almost all the households in KRG. And the other alleged reasons for this protests are corruption, nepotism, unemployment, and social justice. When we are looking at the general perspective, we can see that the main reason we see the alleged reasons are almost the same, namely the corruption, social injustice, and poor public services. But the Iraqi, when we are look at the Iraq after 2005, there was like the civil war, then the war against ISIS. So there was not much of a time for the political figures, but also when you are looking at the political figures, many political parties or the political organisms are just based on their group identity and on their group benefits. So when we cannot see much of an Iraqism previously, but after the defeat of ISIS in the late 2017, we can today see that the Iraqi identity is on the rise. Therefore, the political parties are trying to bandwagon this trend, and they are also changing their political perspectives to a more Iraqi one. Before it was like the Iraqi Sunni, Iraqi Shia, Iraqi Kurd, or even more localized identity, and more localized identity-based benefits was put in play, such as like the Basra tribesmen. They were running for the elections on their own political lists, and it was something besides the Iraqi identity. It was a very localized identity, but which was accepted by the people living in there. For the protest movements, I will not continue. I will not drag on the topic any longer. If there are any questions about this, about the part till now, about the presentation till now, please feel free to share it with me. If not, I will continue with the forward. What is going to be the implication of this of this instance? Is there any questions about that? Okay, I will just continue on. And if you have any questions, as I said, feel free to send them to me. And when we speak about the protest movements and the demographics of Iraq, and what counts most is that the Iraqi population is very young, and today when we are speaking about the median age being around 20, which means that almost half of the Iraqi population was born after around the year 2000. So they don't remember how the life was during the Ba'ath period, and what they have witnessed is that they are living in a country which was devastated by the wars, and later the civil war, then the war against ISIS. So people, especially the youth, the young people of Iraq are they want to see the change because they are not satisfied with their lives. They are not satisfied with the education they have. They are not satisfied with their lives after their education. They cannot find jobs. The employment rate is, when you look at it, it is I think around 10 to 15% in Iraq today. But that is not because there is enough. It is not because that there is enough jobs for everyone, but it is because that they are creating useless jobs just to increase employment. But on the other hand, it is becoming a very big burden on the Iraqi people and the Iraqi economy. Most of the budget is being spent on the salaries of the people. Therefore, they cannot invest more on the infrastructure or more on the projects that will be generating employment. Excuse me. Therefore, as I said, the youth is very, very annoyed by this issues, and this generation is different than the previous ones because because in the previous generations people could not use communication devices such as mobile or the smartphones. But today the Iraqi youth can see what is happening in the world. They can see the living standards of the world, and they can just compare it with their own. So today we can see a very, very annoyed and very troubled generation raising in Iraq, and this generation wants to see the change. This is going to be one of the one of the points to be following for the future of Iraq. The youth movements is going to be an important aspect of the Iraq's future. And later, when we are speaking about the other side of these issues, when we were speaking about the people's side, but the other part, the other side of the medallion is the politicians. Today, we can see a very fractured political sphere, political groups, because first we can see sectarian-based political parties, we can see ethnic-based political parties, we can see very localized and ethnic or sectarian-based political parties. This is a very issue which makes it very difficult for the elected politicians to be in the parliament to discuss what is going to be happen, because they're till now most of the figures alignment was not to Iraq, but it was to their localized groups. Today, due to the protests, an election is expected on the June 2021, but this is going to be a very important one for the few reasons that I will be mentioning. The first one is that the elections will be run by a new electoral law. Previously, each governorate was a single electoral zone, but in the new electoral law, the provinces, the governors are divided into smaller electoral districts. But this is the Iraqi parliament has a quota of 25% for the women, and based on this quota, each electoral district is going to have a woman candidate and other male candidates in each electoral district. So this is going to be if this law is used without any discrimination, we can say that this law is going to end up changing most of the figures that we see in the Iraqi parliament today. And if this law is unsuccessful about bringing change, it is going to be another reason for the Iraqi youth and Iraqi people to be disappointed on the political process. And even though when we look at the 2018 elections, the turnout rate was around 44.5%, so it was already very low. And if this electoral law is not going to be successful on bringing excitement to Iraqi people for participating in the elections, it is the turnout rate is going to be even lower than the last one, and it is going to be, and it is going to raise some questions about the legitimacy of the political system of Iraq. And when we are speaking about the KRG in specific, today the protests in Suleymania region is also limited in this region, but it is limited in the Suleymania region. And if you remember when I was speaking about the 2011 KRG protests, it was also based on the Suleymania province. It is mainly because of the social and social structure of the province. In Erbil or Duhok, it is the security situation is more intense. Therefore, people cannot hit on the streets as easy as it is happening in the Suleymania province. Therefore, today the KRG protests are limited in the Süleymaniye province only, and it raises questions about the future of the region. Because the main reason of this protests are the unpaid salaries. Maybe in the last 40 months, the public servants in the KRG could only take half of their salary or maybe less. And this is going to be a reason why the Süleymaniye-based political parties, namely the most importantly the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, PUK, it is going to be calling for a disbanding of the KRG, or maybe I should call it differently, forming a different region, a different federal region with the Süleymaniye and Halepçe. So this is going to be an impact on the future of the KRG, because if the KRG experience in Iraq is unsuccessful, it is going to be a reason why other governors should not become provinces, because today the KRG is asking for Baghdad to pay the salaries, but depending on the agreement Baghdad and Erbil had, Erbil is supposed to hand in the oil revenue to Baghdad, and all the public spending should be done by Baghdad. But today the KRG cannot hand in the oil revenues because it is in debt, and on the other hand, Baghdad pays the salaries, but Baghdad cannot pay the complete salaries to the KRG because it is not receiving the oil funds from the KRG. So it may be a very important example for other provinces, other governors, for not becoming in the federal regions. But on the other hand, it can be the root cause of the KRG becoming separated between the Süleymaniye-based administration and the Erbil-based administration. And I think this is going to be the points that we should be watching in the future. I believe we have some questions, so I will have a look on them. And one question, speaking about protesters, how are they organizing those who participate in the protests? Who is leading? An organization or spontaneously? How does the process work? Okay, it is an interesting question. And first of all, there is no single centralized authority about the protest. But when you look at the provinces in specific, you will see some commissions formed by the activists and NGOs and other relevant parties. In some provinces, there are these commissions formed, and in some provinces, there are more than single commission formed for about the protest movement. So when we speak, there is no single or centralized authority or an organizing party for this protests. But on the other hand, yes, there are some organizing institutions, parties, but these are mainly individuals and NGOs and other civil society organizations, like the workers' associations in some cases. These are taking part in the organization of this protest. So these, and speaking, if they are organized spontaneously or with a timetable, when the protests start in a single place, it can be it can be an example for the other places. As I said, the recent protests that which is still ongoing in Iraq, was started with the then Prime Minister Adil Abdulmehdi's decision of changing the position of counterterrorism unit forces commander. So, but today when we look at to the protest, it is not limited to this issue, and it is not about this incident anymore. It is about something broader. So when protest starts in a single location, you can see that it is just becoming an example for other people to call for their needs and for the protests that they want. Sorry. I think it was sufficient for this question. If not, please feel free to ask a follow-up question. Okay, another question. Do you think the economic chaos in Iraq is being replaced today by its strategic strength in terms of geographical location? Well, today we can see the economic crisis continue in Iraq. And when we look at to the geographical location of Iraq, yes, it is especially about for the Turkey and for the Europe. It is at the gates alongside with the Syria. It is the gate to the Middle East. So it is an important. It is an important, and also for the when you look at the broader map, it is an important place. But I think the most important point I should say in this for this question is that today, like after the invasion of Iraq in 2003, the public political figures in Iraq are still mostly the opposition forces before 2003. I'm saying this by the parties and some of the public figures. So today, after the 2003 invasion, Iraq was unsuccessful of creating a new generation of politicians. This is, I think, the most important point I should say here, because the lack of this political figures, or the lack of this new generation of politicians, it is going to be very difficult for Iraq, because the politicians today we have in Iraq are mostly from as I said, they are from the Ba'ath period. They were not Ba'athists, but they are the people of the Ba'athist period. So the political policy making process are almost adopted from the Ba'ath party. So to overcome these issues, including the economic issues, or to maximizing the Iraq's strength due to its geographical location, Iraq is going to be needing a new generation of politicians, which just maybe say Iraq first, like on their policies. So it is going to be very difficult for Iraq, but today the Iraqi identity is on the rise in Iraq. The Iraqism is rising, so there is going to be a chance for Iraq to create its new generation of politicians. But on the other hand, today we can witness the Iranian and the US tensions in Iraq more than maybe ever. So it is going to be a difficult for them. Okay, about looking forward, as soon as Biden takes over office on 20th January, what do you foresee the role of the USA will be in Iraq? Another point regarding the constitutional building process, did it take inclusive approach to genuinely foster political inclusiveness of minorities and youth? Well, I will start from the second question. it was well, there was some there was some problems regarding to choosing the people to participate in this, but it was mainly because of that in the time period some also political actors were they were like some Sunni parties, for example, was boycotting the political process, so they were not represented in this process as much as they were supposed to. And when we are speaking about the minorities, yes, the minorities were mostly excluded. What I mean by excluded is that maybe they had a representative or two, but they their ideas, their opinions were excluded. So yes, the minorities were excluded mainly, even they were having a chair on the desk, but their opinions were mostly excluded. So it is going to be a very it was so two reasons. One being the some political actors boycotting. The other one was that it was not a on a very democratic nature. So I think that will be answering the second question. And for the first question, sorry. And for the second question, when we look at to the US political system, or namely the Trump and Biden, when we look at to the Trump administration, we have seen the unilateralism during his period, and Biden during his also on his previous office or in his previous runs for the presidency, we can say that he is a representative of multilateralism in general. Therefore, what we can say is that Biden can make some negotiations with Iran again, like we witnessed in the Obama administration, and which can in return create an even more area for Iran to continue its activity in Iraq. So this is, I think, the most challenging part of the Biden administrations to Iraq. And on the other hand, if if a new agreement is done between Iran and US, like the nuclear deal, it is going to it may have an impact on the Iranian proxies in Iraq, or the Iraqi militia groups which are close to Iran, to have an more more of a breeding area within Iraq. In return, that can be a threat, a direct threat to U.S. presence in Iraq as well. Like in the just last couple of days, we have witnessed again some attacks on the U.S. embassy in Baghdad, and yesterday also there was some issues happening between the Iraqi authorities and the militia groups in Baghdad. So the future with the Biden can create a problematic area for Iraq more than, I think, the Trump era. I hope that was also sufficient to answer. Okay, I think these are all the questions that was raised during this presentation, and I will just ask if there is any more question, last question, or any comments that wants to be mentioned. I think we still have time for that. So, any more criticism, questions, or anything from the participants? No, there was another question due to the chat I couldn't see. It was about Turkey and Iraqi Kurds, and well, the question was asking why there is a conflict between the Turkey and the Iraqi Kurds. So I think it's a very out of touch question, to be honest, because when you look at the to KRG today, the relations between the KRG and Turkey is just like on a different level than most of the other countries and the KRG. And even when there was the KRG's independence referendum and an illegitimate referendum based, non-based on the Iraqi constitution, the KRG political figures were well, not only the political figures, but the Kurdish people in Iraq, they were very afraid that Turkey was going to close the border gates like Iran. And even the rumors that Turkey may close the border gates to the KRG was the main reason why many of the good prices skyrocketing. Like even a glass of a bottle of water was around 250 dinars before this instant, and after that, even a bottle of water price was skyrocketed 4 times to around 1,000 dinars. So this is an example. Like I don't see any conflict between Turkey and the KRG. On the other hand, there could be problems between two actors at any time, but it is, I think, more important for the actors to have a common ground that they can build their relation upon. And I believe Turkey, KRG, and not only KRG, Iraq in general has an historic background, which can be the basis of a very brighter future for all the actors in the region. So I think that question is also answered now. And okay, then we don't have any more questions. So I would like to thank all of you for participating and for your questions. And thank you so much. And I hope the rest of the seminars is going to be useful for you. And I hope this seminar was also useful for you. And thank you everyone for the participation. And thank you for the participation. And I hope the rest of the program will be useful. Thank you so much.